The sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the vast expanse of the Willow Creek Plains in hues of burnt orange and deep crimson, as if the sky itself were bleeding out the day's final breaths. Elias Hart, a man forged by the relentless grind of frontier life, urged his weary horse forward, the animal's hooves kicking up small clouds of dust from the parched earth. At 38 years old, Elias carried the weight of years that felt like decades, his frame lean and sinewy from endless hours of labor under an unforgiving sun. His ranch, a modest claim of 200 acres on the outskirts of what passed for civilization in 1880's Dakota Territory, was more a testament to survival than prosperity. The fences sagged under the assault of wind and neglect, the barn's roof patched with whatever scraps he could scrounge, and his herd, barely 24 head of scrawny cattle, grazed on the brittle remnants of grass that the drought had spared. Elias's wife, Clara, had been taken by fever 3 winters past, leaving him with nothing but echoes in the empty cabin and a stubborn resolve to hold on to the land that was all he had left of their dreams. He adjusted his wide-brimmed hat, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cooling evening air, and scanned the horizon for strays. The cattle lowed softly, their ribs visible like the bars of a cage beneath their hides, a grim reminder of how close he was to ruin. Elias had poured everything into this place, his savings from odd jobs in town, the inheritance from his father back east that barely covered the deed, and countless nights mending tools by lantern light. But the land fought back, as it always did out here. Rattlesnakes slithered through the crevices, coyotes picked off the weaklings, and now this interminable dry spell that turned rivers to trickles and dreams to dust. He whistled sharply to a lagging cow, guiding it back toward the corral, his mind wandering to the ledger in his pocket. Another month like this, and he'd be forced to sell off what little he had, maybe even the horse beneath him, Old Gray, who had carried him through blizzards and breakdowns alike. The cry came suddenly, slicing through the quiet like a knife through canvas. It wasn't the familiar bellow of livestock or the distant howl of a wolf, it was human, raw and laced with pain, echoing from the dry gully that bordered his property to the east. Elias froze, his hand instinctively dropping to the rifle slung across his saddle. Out here, sounds like that could mean trouble, bandits, injured travelers, or worse, signs of the tensions brewing between settlers and the Lakota tribes that roamed these lands. The reservations were close enough that Elias had seen their riders from afar, proud figures on painted ponies, but interactions were rare and fraught. Whispers in the saloon spoke of raids and reprisals, though Elias had never crossed paths with hostility himself. He tethered Old Gray to a fence post, his boots crunching on the gravel as he approached the gully's edge, peering down into the shadowed crevice. There she was, a crumpled form against a jagged outcrop of rock, her dark hair tangled and matted with what looked like blood. Elias's breath caught in his throat. She was young, perhaps in her early 20s, her skin a warm bronze that spoke of heritage tied to the earth itself. Her clothing, fringed buckskin tunic adorned with intricate beadwork in patterns of sun and eagle feathers, marked her unmistakably as Lakota, one of the people from the Pine Ridge Agency not 5 miles away. She lay motionless now, but her chest rose and fell in shallow, ragged breaths, a testament that she still clung to life. Elias scanned the surroundings, his eyes darting for signs of others. Attackers, companions, anything that might explain her predicament. The gully was empty, save for a few scattered stones and the faint trail of footprints leading away, as if she'd been dragged or stumbled here alone. Without a second thought, driven by some innate decency that overrode the flicker of caution in his mind, Elias scrambled down the steep embankment. Loose dirt gave way under his feet, sending pebbles skittering into the depths, but he reached her side quickly, kneeling in the dust. Up close, the extent of her injuries was stark, a deep gash across her temple wept crimson, her left ankle twisted at an unnatural angle, swollen and bruised purple. Her face, though smeared with grime and blood, held a quiet beauty, high cheekbones, full lips parted in unconscious agony, and long lashes that fluttered against her lids. Elias pressed 2 fingers to her neck, feeling the weak but steady pulse beneath her skin. Alive, thank God. But for how long? Out here, with night falling and temperatures dropping, exposure could finish what the fall had started. He scooped her into his arms, her body light and limp against his chest, the scent of sage and earth clinging to her despite the metallic tang of blood. She murmured something incoherent in her sleep, her head lolling against his shoulder, and Elias felt a pang of protectiveness he hadn't known since Clara's final days. "Easy now," he whispered, more to himself than to her, as he climbed back up the gully, his muscles straining under the awkward load. Old Gray nickered softly as they approached, and Elias managed to secure her across the saddle before mounting behind, one arm steadying her as he urged the horse toward home at a gentle trot. The cabin wasn't far, a mile, maybe less, but every jolt of the terrain made him wince, imagining the pain it caused her unseen wounds. The cabin came into view as the last rays of sunlight gilded its rough-hewn logs, a squat structure with a sod roof and a stone chimney that puffed lazy smoke from the fire he'd banked that morning. Elias dismounted carefully, lifting the woman down and carrying her inside, kicking the door shut behind him with his heel. The interior was sparse, a single room with a cast-iron stove, a rough table scarred from years of use, a shelf of canned goods and tools, and the cot in the corner where Clara had once slept beside him. He laid the woman there, propping her head with a rolled blanket, and fetched his medical kit from the cupboard, a battered tin box with bandages, carbolic acid, and a few laudanum tinctures he'd bought from the trading post. Working methodically, Elias lit a lantern and stoked the fire, the flames casting flickering shadows across the walls. He boiled water in a kettle, the steam filling the air with a comforting warmth that belied the chill of worry in his gut. First, the head wound, he cleaned it gently with a cloth soaked in the acid solution, wincing as she stirred and whimpered, her hand twitching as if to ward him off. The gash was deep but not to the bone. He packed it with clean lint and wrapped it in a strip of boiled cloth, tying it secure. Next, the ankle. He removed her moccasin carefully, revealing the extent of the swelling, the skin hot and inflamed. Likely broken, he thought, recalling the times he'd set his own bones after ranch mishaps. He fashioned a splint from a broom handle and leather straps, aligning the limb as best he could without causing more harm. Throughout the process, Elias's mind raced. Who was she? Why was she alone in that gully? Had she been attacked, by whites, by her own people, or by some other misfortune? The Lakota were a proud nation, their ways intertwined with the land in ways Elias could only admire from afar. He'd heard stories from old trappers in town. Tales of vision quests, sacred ceremonies, and a deep respect for life that settlers often dismissed as superstition. But prejudice ran deep. The saloon talk was full of fears about hostiles and government treaties broken like dry twigs. Elias had never bought into the hate. Clara had taught him better, with her gentle reminders that all folks were just trying to survive. Still, harboring a Lakota woman could bring trouble, from the tribe if they thought he'd harmed her, or from neighbors if rumors spread. As night fully claimed the outside world, Elias pulled a chair beside the cot, his rifle within easy reach just in case. The woman slept fitfully, her breaths coming in hitches, sweat beading on her brow despite the cool room. He brewed a pot of weak coffee, the aroma mingling with the herbal scent of her bandages, and sipped it slowly, his eyes never leaving her face. In the lantern's glow, she seemed almost ethereal, a figure out of one of those dime novels he'd read as a boy. Adventures of the Wild West, though this felt far too real. Hours ticked by, the fire popped and settled, the wind howled outside like a lonely spirit. Elias dozed in fits, jerking awake at every sound, his thoughts drifting to memories of Clara, her laughter in the kitchen, her hands mending his shirts, the way she'd hum hymns while tending the garden that now lay fallow. Dawn crept in slowly, a pale light filtering through the shuttered window, chasing away the shadows. Elias rose stiffly, his back aching from the vigil, and checked on his patient. The woman's color had improved, the flush of fever had ebbed, her breathing steadier now. He touched her forehead, cooler, a good sign. Relief washed over him like rain on parched soil, though questions lingered. What would he do when she woke? Take her to the reservation? Or wait for her people to come. The thought of riders appearing at his door sent a shiver down his spine, but he pushed it aside. He'd done what was right. Consequences be damned. Stepping outside to tend the cattle, Elias breathed in the crisp morning air, the sky a vast blue dome unbroken by clouds. He scattered what feed he had, the animals milling gratefully, and allowed himself a moment of hope. Maybe this act of kindness would turn his luck.